In this video, we are going to orchestrate CatalogAPI microservices with Docker Compose. Docker Compose is a tool for defining and running multi-container applications in Docker environment. So you can see that in the last video, we have containerized a single catalog microservices with adding Docker support into our application. And here you can see the illustration of the steps for containerization and orchestration. We develop our code locally and adding Docker support to containerize our CatalogAPI microservices. And now we will orchestrate these microservices with using Docker Compose, including the database and microservice itself. So with Docker Compose, we use a YAML file to configure our applications, services, networks, and volume definition. And this allows us to run entire application with a single command, which is the Docker Compose app. So please open the Visual Studio. We have already created Docker Compose before, and Docker Compose override file is generated when we are activating our backend services PostgreSQL. That you can check the Docker Compose YAML file, including only CatalogDB PostgreSQL, and including in the override file, this only includes PostgreSQL configurations in here. So far, we have only used Docker Compose for activating backend services, but now we will use Docker Compose to orchestrate all microservices and databases communicating each other in Docker network. So for that purpose, we will follow the same steps. To orchestrate the CatalogAPI, we should select the CatalogAPI, right click, add container orchestrator support, and we should select the Docker Compose and click the OK button. And target operating system should be Linux. Click the OK and see that Docker Compose YAML and override file editing from the Visual Studio. And this time we can see two services, one for the CatalogDB and another for the CatalogAPI, representing our microservices. And this is indicating our image and Docker file location that will be built as a Docker container into Docker Compose. And if you go to the Docker Compose override file, you can see that this is the CatalogAPI microservice configurations. These configurations are generated from the Visual Studio, but these are not sufficient to activate our CatalogAPI, because we should override this YAML file to configure the port numbers accordingly and adding new environment variables for database connections. And also we will add some depends on containers. So now we can start the editing these configurations one by one. I am going to explain and change the ports. So ports are mapped to enable communication between our host machine and the containers. We are developing the CatalogAPI microservices and deploy the local environment, but this time we will use these microservices in the Docker environment. So that means we will perform the port mapping about 6060 port numbers. So according to our slide, we are going to edit these port numbers and exposing these port numbers with starting the 6000. So these are the HTTP and HTTPS port numbers that we redirect from the Docker environment. And the next configuration is environment variables. We need to set the correct connection string and environment variables for our services. For that purpose, I'm going to add a connection string under these port definitions in the environment variables. Here you can see that we have put a connection string as an environment variable, and these are including server name as a CatalogDB, port number which is the default PostgreSQL port number, database name CatalogDB, user ID Postgres, password is Postgres, and include error detail is true. So this is the environment variable. That means this will be injected to our CatalogAPI microservices when the application starts up in Docker environment as a Docker container. And the last configuration is dependency management. We use depends on keyword in here in order to control the startup order of our services in Docker environment. So CatalogAPI service depends on the CatalogDB, because we are relying on the database in our catalog microservices, and that means this will be our depends on keyword. And under the depends on, I'm going to put CatalogDB, which name is our PostgreSQL container name and CatalogDB. So notice that we have configured the connection string to the point to the CatalogDB, that also we can depend on the CatalogDB, which is our database server name. So in Docker Compose, Services on the same network can communicate with each other using the service names. Our catalog API service can reach the database using the service name, which is a catalog DB. That's why we put the server name as a catalog DB to communicate with our PostgreSQL database in Docker environment. And also we are overriding the existing configuration with double underscore. This is also very important. That means this will be override the current configuration in the application setting. If you go to the application settings for catalog API, you can see that we have a connection string and database. In order to override this configuration, that means overriding this server name, we put the double underscore in here and setting the whole connection string from the beginning. As you can see that we have successfully orchestrated catalog API and PostgreSQL in Docker Compose.